The workshop critique. How to respond to peer review. The basics. Your peer review should include a brief synopsis of the piece, 2 to 5 sentences as necessary, a list of 3 things you admire about the piece and why you admire them with specific details from the piece to illustrate your point, a list of 3 suggestions you have for the writer about how to make the piece stronger or pointing out places in the piece where you were confused so that the writer will know she needs to smooth those places out a little, a careful line edit done directly into a Word document of the essay using Microsoft Word to make suggestions via the comment feature. Example. For the sake of this presentation, we'll be using Sherman Alexie's Somebody Else's Genocide from the readings this week. A thing to keep in mind, my suggestions for making this stronger probably would actually make the piece weaker. Alexie is a very accomplished writer capable of making the words on the page do exactly what he wants them to do. So take them as examples, but don't take them as genuine critiques of the writing. The synopsis. In this essay, the authorial character is at a reading where he is shocked by a German woman's criticism of America's treatment of Native Americans and her claim that the German people would never do that. This shock is clearly caused by Germany's own more recent history of genocide. In a second section, he recalls a trip he took to a concentration camp and thinks about how genocide could happen anywhere. 3 things I admire about this essay. I think the juxtaposition between the 2 key scenes, the reading and the remembering trip to Dachau, are perfectly balanced and each is necessary for the other. The reading scene sets us up to feel superior. The Dachau section reminds us that we are not. The choice to portray the German woman in the reading scene largely through dialogue, to let her have her own voice rather than to summarize what the author remembers of the conversation, is, I think, key to making this work. It allows us to react along with the authorial character rather than having the authorial character tell us how we ought to react. And it gives the author a little more leeway because we don't feel that he's making fun of her, only that he's reporting what she said. The use of the connecting walls between the camp at Dachau and the homes of everyday German citizens is a great choice for the closing image of the essay. It reminds us how close, both physically and ethically, we live to the atrocities committed around us, and that proximity implicates us, whether or not we were active participants in those atrocities. 3 suggestions for strengthening the essay. I'm not thoroughly convinced modern audiences below a certain age will recognize Dachau by name. Perhaps the author needs to give a few of the key details about the camp for younger readers less well-versed in world history. The author assumes that the reader will be familiar enough with his reputation as a Native American author of renown that he doesn't give us any details about himself. While he is indeed a pretty famous writer, I think it might be helpful if he didn't assume the reader already knew who he was and provided a little more context. I was a little bit confused by the author's assertion that the trains to Dachau should never run on time, and it took me a while to understand that this was because prisoners were delivered to the death camp via the train. Maybe the author could make this a little more clear. Some things about your line edits. You aren't responsible for catching every grammatical mistake, but where you do see them, it's helpful to point them out and suggest corrections. The most useful thing you can do in line edits is to point out places in the text where you become confused or where you think the author has said something a little different than what it seems they meant to say. Remember that encouraging comments are just as useful as corrective ones, and that part of the work is pointing out particularly good phrasing, ideas that excite you, etc. Don't tell me the moon is shining, show me the glint of light on broken glass. Anton Chekhov.